Hello.
Hi, Joseph. Can you hear me okay?
Hi. Yeah, everything is okay. I was hiking and I'm just
Nice.
back.
Very good. How was the hike?
Tiring. So I was hiking the Taishan Mount that is in the Shandong province of China. It's a
Oh
very
my
high
God.
mountain. Yes, I took
Did you
five
get any
hours to reach the top
did you
already.
get any
Yeah.
good photos? No? Yes?
So hello, can you get me? I think it's freezing.
Yeah, yeah, I can. It just
Yeah.
went a
Okay, it's
little
okay
blank
now.
for a
It's okay
second.
now. I can hear you.
Yeah. So you were there just how long does it take you to get there? Um, and was it just a nice trip? Were you with some
Five
friends?
hours, five hours and a half. Yeah, it
Good.
took
Good.
me 5 hours. I mean, from the bottom to the top. And of
Hmm.
course, I was there with friends, and yeah, because usually Chinese people go there with a wish. From the bottom to the top, they just have one wish. Some are, hoping to have children, hoping for marriage, wealth, and everything. And at the top, you get a little tip, and then you write something, and then you tie it. So this is but for me, it was
Okay.
just hiking. Yeah, definitely.
That's cool. That's cool. All right. Well, I'm glad that you had a nice weekend excursion. I'm also glad that you can join me here on the show and lend your expertise to us. There's a couple of questions that we're going to ask. We're going to also ask a few things about you personally, just about the work that you're doing in China, where you're from, and what you're studying. Perhaps to get started, if you'd like to introduce yourself and what you've been up to.
Okay, so I'm Olivier Mendo'o from Cameroon. I've been in China for 8 years. Mostly as a student first because I came here because I passed the master entrance for my studies at Peking University. So I did masters and PhD at Peking University, and I was studying international relations for masters and international relations and politics for my PhD. And after graduating, now I'm working, in China for the time being. But other than that, I'm also involved in, community service volunteering because while studying, I actually volunteered in several Chinese villages. So I've been to many Chinese countrysides to actually learn about, poverty alleviation practices, but also to sort of I used to call it like teaching Africa, to the local people, in order to demystify because there are stereotypes everywhere. But if there is a picture that they should have from Africa, it should be from Africans. So this is the job I'm doing. It's been 8 years, and yeah. Other than that, as well, I'm also community leaders. I had the African Youth Delegation in China since 2018. And as such, it is made of students mostly, but also young entrepreneurs. So, gathering the community, trying to help one another as students, also um, somehow interfering. I mean, if there are any issues among communities that is also touching the Chinese counterpart, yeah, will also be coming out and coming up and trying to solve that issues, linking with the Chinese authorities. So that's also something we do. But overall, the great goal of the delegation is actually to bridge what we learn here back to the continent. So overall, that's exactly what I'm doing: volunteering, community services, academia. Yeah, I'm still also into academia, but yeah, overall this is. But I'm also involved in global kind of. I mean, global governance because I attended the UNGA last year. Also, yeah, trying to make sure that Africa is represented, everywhere. Shifting narratives. So yeah, That's I do a little bit of
So
everything, yeah, but
yeah, seems like
the
there's a
common
lot
point
going
is
on here.
the African agency. Yeah.
Okay, so with the African agency, what has the work been like in the past year with you? Because you have a lot of moving pieces, but what are some of the commonalities that string everything together?
Well, the I think it has been quite a hard undertaking. I would say the common ground has been to actually, try and elevate, and reasserting the African agency, right? That's the link, between everything that I'm doing, right? Because I want to make sure that Africa as a party has a say at the table. I want to make sure that Africa takes part to conversation, on equal terms because, not being passive, not just being passive, but proactive, That's why also I set up the China Africa Youth Federation in 2019 with a Chinese, in order to teach one another, People have to know that Africa is a partner, not, and a proactive partner. People also have to know that they can learn from partnering with Africa. They can learn from African culture, and that's the connection. Even at Peking University, even outside, that's exactly. I mean, for those who know me, that's the
That's what you mean.
commonalities of what I'm doing.
I,
I'm trying to make sure that we also have something to teach while learning also from a new experience, Chinese experience, to bringing the China experience at the table, back home because we have a very furbished geopolitical dish on that, but we need also the Chinese. We need to understand better the Chinese partner, to see how we can actually fascinate our long-term goals. So yeah, this is also you know, the connection. This is also what the goals that I set for myself.
it's a very interesting statement because for many people looking at China-Africa relations, they focus primarily on what China's doing and what China's teaching. Now, this, on the flip side, is saying we have a diverse and wealthy continent. How are we going to teach our lessons to them so that they can better serve our needs? So it's a very interesting approach, I would say so. And the work that you're doing with the China Africa Youth Federation, maybe we could talk a little bit about the future of that, not necessarily just the federation, but what that precedent is. What are you developing, and how are you helping younger people see Africa differently, or perhaps learn to engage with Africa in more meaningful ways?
Yeah, that's a very good question. First of all, I mean, like other federation, I wanted to make things different. Of course, the federation is there to bridge. We all know the rhetorics, bridging cultures. We're cultural diplomats, and I will spare you this, but the key point is to really, call the Chinese youth at the table, right? On equal terms. They have to understand and learn the real Africa from Africans. And also calling the African counterpart, the youth, what I mean, to sit down and also understand the real China on equal terms, without any cliches, without any stereotypes, right? That's
Yeah.
number one. So starting with my partner, I'm co-founder because the other co-founder is a Chinese also. So I started from him, right? Deconstructing what he is thinking about Africa because of course we've been in China for a long time. There are several cliches, and I've been to Chinese countryside, like you can imagine. So anyway, they have to know and respect Africa, and we African youth also have to know and respect China. That's number one. And number two, I also aim through this federation at bringing in lessons from Africa and lessons from China, right? It means because when you, I'm I have a PhD in international relations, so you can see that any international cooperation, when you see China, Africa, what I refer to Africa, China, because I'm African, just saying, you would
Yeah.
see that, yeah, you will see that, well, it's still, yeah, the other one giving, or, I don't really like that rhetoric. um not that it's not true, but us, as young people, right, we need to also bring new, new waves, right? Because as a partner, you have, it's a giving. There's nothing, never, I'm doing international relations, there's nothing in terms of geopolitical kind of partnership, there's nothing like best friend. It's just partnership, you know giving, and but it is just how each party manages what he gets. So through these federations, I want from the Chinese youth to learn, from Africa. We have a lot to teach. Just to give you a very brief example, if we stick to the culture, right, we see how China actually packages its culture very good, with the Confucius and everything. And all of these ideas, Confucianism, we have the same too in Africa. Just saying. So when they come, it's not like, they come with the Chinese idea. That's very good. We respect that. I speak Mandarin. I did my PhD in Mandarin, like Mandarin talk, which means I'm already embracing, but I also want you to embrace. So when you're telling me that, okay, we have Confucianism, we have Taoism, we have the Chinese perception. Of course, it is one of the one that portrays community, right? Community with a shared future for mankind. I tell you, yes, sir, good. I respect that, but I also tell you Ubuntu, right? I accept your community with a shared future for mankind, which I respect and I think it's a great idea. But you also have to incorporate the Ubuntu. Going far, going fast alone, going far together is us. This is our wisdom. So
Yeah.
now the federation, which brings me to the third point. I want to spare you with the cultural ambassador, whatever. No, no, no. The third aspect, and this is where I'm landing, and this is what I really want to achieve with that federation, is to align. You have the community with a shared future for mankind. We have Ubuntu, where the two meets, right? Commonalities. We have to find more commonalities because we embrace the Chinese culture. The Chinese have to embrace the African culture. We see where the two meet, and that's what I call the real win-win cooperation. Because until when we see and apprehend, the Chinese culture, and we see how also they can apprehend and respect ours, we'll see the commonalities. That's how we can see how to better channel Chinese development, Chinese aid, so as it fits our own terms, so as it fits our own realities, so as it aligns with our priorities. That's actually what I mean by sustainable development, the
Yeah.
one bracket of sustainable development. So this is what I want to achieve with that federation. And I started with my partner. They know me very well. They laugh every time. So I start with them. I say I have a PhD in international relations, but in Mandarin. So you can imagine I've suffered, all the efforts, right? You have to learn
Yeah.
Africa. And I am going to villages also, beside the poverty alleviation, but I'm going to school too. I can share you later
Mm.
with some people, but I go to school. It's very important. Education is the key. I'm going to school, to Chinese schools, remote schools, middle school, high school, to teach them Africa. Show them the better picture, because TikTok, we have social media, it's out there. You have something, oh, do you have water in Africa? You were actually on the back of the hippopotamus to go to, I say,
Yeah.
excuse you. So teaching them the real. Africa, right?
Mm-hmm.
Education is the key. Say no. If you want, when I go, I say, here I came to have down to earth exchanges, right? If you're taking the path, the stereotypical type path, then okay, all of us will have a stereotypical mindset because you have to understand that, they're not just stereotypes towards Africa. They're stereotypes toward everyone, right? So if we are choosing the right path, then let me show you the real Africa, and I'm waiting for you to show me the real China. That's what I want to. And also to finish, what I also wish on a more practical terms, what I also wish to achieve with that federation is a follow-up mechanisms. You might have been aware that China is actually the second best destination for African young people, students abroad, overseas after France, right? Outpassing UK also and the US. But so many African young people are coming to China to study, right? But after completion, they go back to the continent, and we don't see any practical outcomes, right? Because they might be redirecting to something else. They might be ending as translator and everything. So I'm willing to to establish a follow-up mechanism so that all of those with a Chinese background, they come together, not just the Chinese part, because it's the China Africa, right? But also the Chinese that are in Africa, because they are also African ambassadors. So let me give you an example. I organize every time what we call the China Breeze, the China corner and the Africa corner. In China, it's the Africa corner. I select an African country and I bring those students, from for example Zimbabwe. You tell the Chinese, not only diplomats, businessmen, etc., diverse audience. Tell them the real country, the real image about Zimbabwe. Different, but I invite also the Chinese living in Zimbabwe. Come and tell us how well. You,
Yeah.
you know, this is what I want. And the other way around, of course, the China corner in Africa is the same setting. So this is the logic. Um, this is the logic behind the China Africa Youth Federation, and I'm very happy to have also very open-minded partners that are also willing to learn because yeah, it's a teaching. That's win-win cooperation.
Yeah, true. The phrase teaching Africa, can almost be a slogan because it's so powerful. There's so much that is unknown and taken for granted especially in terms of relationships between nation states, diplomats going and not really understanding what they say about a certain country or the needs of that place. Development within itself, if not done locally, might be a futile effort. This is something that I would like to lead into the next question. Thinking about development, thinking about where that relationship really is with China and Africa. The narrative and the discourse, for a
Well,
large part,
yeah.
or just
Mm.
the narrative and the discourse, for a large part, especially in the academic world, you've probably touched upon this in your PhD, is that there is a problem with accruing debt, sovereign debt. And so we're thinking, to what extent is China you know, an active uh, participant in allowing this to happen? What are your perspectives on it? Do you feel that this is something
Mm.
that will be a hindrance? Is the relationship a hindrance or is it beneficial long term in regards to the development needs and the debt that is there?
Mm.
If it's also debunked. People say things that, okay, the Belt and Road Initiative as the debt trap initiative is debunked largely. So where is it debunked? Where is it valid in your opinion?
Okay, I think that issue, you know, has been all over the place, for for several years already. But I think, for me, I like checking the numbers, right? When we talk about debt, if you look at the African countries, GDP, China actually has one of the least. right, amount of debt, you know, compared to other development partners and slash international organizations. I think our good friends Hannah Ryder summarized it very well in one of her reports. If you look at Development Reimagined, the platform that she set, she actually brought in several points there. So, but for me, about that, I think the for me I like to discuss this issue from our own side. When there is a
Yeah.
problem, when there's an issue, don't start first looking to others. Start, inquisiting, start looking. Yeah, that's, I mean, it's pure logic, right? So for us, for African countries, I think it matters how we assess our needs. When I say our, I mean African countries.
Uh-huh.
It matters how we
Yeah.
assess our needs and repayment capabilities, right? To make sure that the deals that we're having align with our long-term development strategies, right? Of course, China has this Belt and Road Initiative, the FOCAC that happened last year, Forum of China Africa Cooperation, and we had several also commitments, right? But I think for us, look at the history, not just African countries, even including China. At some point, they were also relying on Japanese ODA. Look at it. That's so that this every country has been through that, right? But now the difference matters when you align what you're taking to
Yeah.
your actually needs, to your development goals. And that's the key for me. That's the point. How many look in terms of number, we all know that the US is, the thing is the numbers, they're leading, right? No, we have to look at the numbers. They're leading, but the advantage that they have is like dollar, right? But that aside, what I mean is having some sort of money from our development partners, you know, but making it valuable so that we can not only return, not just waiting for them to alleviate or debt sustainability, but it matters how we also capitalize on that. You cannot take so much money to put into, let's say, building one, I don't know, one to putting into one thing that wouldn't even be rentable in 40, 50 years, right? So it matters how to align that. So that's, I think, for this debt issue, let's also look from ourselves. That's one dimension, nationally. The second dimension is regionally or continentally. Because we say it, ourselves. We go fast alone, we go far together. We go far together. So this debt issue, right? Okay, we have well, no, the what we said, the resource curse, all that rhetoric. Please,
Yeah.
please. The way out is actually Africa is strong. African countries are strong when they're together. So if we come together, we'll have better deals. We'll have we'll wait against this IMF and World Bank and so that when they get into a zone, let's say West Africa, North Africa, Central Africa, etc., everything is standardized, right? They do have the Paris Club. There is the Paris Club. Why don't we have our own club of so that we so
Hmm.
it's just some these are just some thoughts because Africa has a power when we coordinate. Of course with several countries, but
Yeah.
we come when we come
Well,
together, we can actually, you know, standardize our
mhm.
our objectives. Look at the EFCFTA. That's very good. Right? It's coming. That's a very positive. These are positive vibes. So on the regional and continental level, this togetherness can also help leverage our, I wouldn't call it dispute, entanglement with the IMF, with the World Bank, because we're still the one, oh no, we're not giving back the money, we're this, oh no. Look, where is the money going, right? The follow-up mechanisms. Okay, you are giving this tariff to Senegal, but this one to, we are losing. So why are there so much regional organizations and continental organization? What are they doing? Right? So this is why my perspective is, let's look from ourselves. There can be different problems out,
Yeah.
but starting from the roots. When you heal the roots, that's the key. Everything that will come up, the fruits and everything, of course.
And
Yeah.
you're saying what
For
the
the African
roots
Union
are
has a greater role.
is the
If you
stand
look at it
foundation
from the Organization of
of
African
what
Unity,
uh,
the
what role does the
soul of
African
that is
Union
to
play then
get us
in that
together,
regard? Is
right?
that just another
Is
regional
to
formality?
have to kind of solidify African voice, not only continentally but internationally. So African Union has a very good role to play. Number one, to actually get to mitigate, between this regional organization, to say we when we talk about the just giving you an example, when we talk about the United Nations Security Council and everything, we have our Eswini consensus. We have our Eswini consensus. And what is Eswini consensus? Right? It is our own African voice, to go to say, look, the UNSC, 70% or 60 or 70% of the issue that you are at the table are concerning Africa, but we don't even have an Africa.
Yeah.
And now you are willing to say, so the African Union has a greater role, but then the difficulty here is the legitimacy, right? Legitimacy
Yeah.
towards African Union and African countries and regional organizations, because that African Union is actually also gets a lot of support from the EU outside, and that's it. The one who gives is the okay. So anyway, but I see a lot of positive lights. The AFCFTA, right? And so African Union coordinates. African Union is actually the one who can bring this African voice. We've been waiting for the AU passport ever since. Just saying, but yeah. So yeah, yeah, that's the role they're supposed to do. But every African countries has to make some extra efforts to produce more, so as to pay some membership fees to
Yeah.
the AU,
That would be
so
incredible.
as us to be real Africans, to African problem to African solutions, right? Because at the end of the day, we have to pay our fees, we have to, right? But also while balancing with the national development and everything. So it that's why I like this. That's why my focus, even on my thesis, development, insecurity, blah blah blah. Development is, I think, you know. Can you imagine? And this is what I see here in China. When people are full, when they can wear very decent clothes, they can have their basic needs fulfilled and everything. What do they think of? Not war, not, it's like, oh, how to improve my life standard, how to create more, how to now, so how do you expect people to create when they're still thinking of tomorrow's, what I will put on my table? So anyway, it's just, I just went over the place, but just African Union has a very crucial role to play in setting platforms, in setting ideas, policies that bring us African countries together, not only internally, but also when we're going outside Africa to discuss some international issues, and when we're dealing with this international organization, to make sure that when they get into our soil, so that we have a criteria. That's our that's our salvation. That's what I wish, you know. That's why I say the Delta Club, and I like Hannah Ryder's idea, the Delta Club, right? The Delta Club. They have the Paris Club. How can we also come together? Okay, let's say for example, okay, I got that from you, and he too from you, but we are never, right? How can we? So I really like her thoughts, but yeah, this is how our own international organizations can the role that they can play, but they still need. We cannot put everything on the AU or the regional organization. It's still the efforts from every African country, right? So that's it's actually they're intertwined actually, you know. So when African countries will be better, that's when actually the AU will also be able to be the legitimacy will be there, and we'll be able to solve more problems.
Yeah, which makes sense. Of course. Of course. Um, Speaking of problems or more problems, we've seen geopolitical tension and competition in the continent rise recently. Uh, I wanted to kind of gauge your understanding of what is happening between China and Western nations and how Africa is positioning itself within the shifting landscape.
Okay. Um.
Um, and then, if, in your
Oh my
opinion, do
God.
you think that African nations can leverage Chinese presence to maintain strategic autonomy? Do you feel like autonomy is achieved more with the Chinese partner or with the Western partner? I just think we're stuck here for a second.
There might be some issues from your side. I don't know.
Hi,
I
you
didn't
okay?
understand the next question, but yeah,
That's so.
you actually went off.
Let me re let me
Okay.
rephrase that really quickly, okay? So, with the rise in geopolitical competition, there's tensions that are coming from the Western side and the Chinese side. How do you see Africa positioning itself in this shifting landscape? Additionally, do you feel like African nations can largely leverage Chinese presence to maintain strategic autonomy? Is autonomy something that is better achieved with China or with Western partners in terms of
Yeah,
development interests?
actually, that's a good. It's not actually the question of do I think that we are definitely capable, right? Because if you look at the African
Mm,
countries, African nations are actually increasingly asserting their strategic autonomy while leveraging international partnership. You can see we call all of them development partners. So we have the West, we have China, we have Japan, etc. So Africa is seeking to engage with many different partners, right, to foster economical growth, but also, more importantly, to foster regional integration. And you mentioned China, right? China, with the infrastructure development, with the trade, right? If you look at the numbers, and also investment, China has a very solidified kind of institutional platform, the Belt and Road Initiative, the FOCAC Forum of China Africa Cooperation, etc. These are opportunities for African nations, right, to sort of address their critical development gaps, right? But again, Africa, I mean, having many partners is one thing, but leveraging all of those partnerships so as to align with our own needs, right? With our own, development goals, national development goals, while also another important point, prioritizing local capacity building, right? Promoting sustainable development growth. I think those are the key, right? So I think we talked about the AU. That's where international organizations, from our continent, came in handy. But your question is very special. But for me, I say African nation, we can definitely leverage, our I would say geopolitical network, right? But one thing, one thing that is important for us to have is, I would call it portfolio mindset. A portfolio mindset, because if you're familiar with geopolitics, you will see that when you're partner with one, they might willing to one, oh no, you are my friend, then you shouldn't be with my enemy, in brackets. You know, if this is a geopolitical game, So now we're talking about US, China, US versus China, then African nations should take party? Question mark. But no. What are our development goals? What do we need? What do our people need? According to our own term. We also have our own agenda, right? Is the US versus China is not our agenda, but because it also happened proxy on the continent. But the geopolitical setting is not there for Africa to choose, but for Africa to look where is my development. You guys are all my partners. I'm partnering with the US. It doesn't make me an enemy of China. I'm partnering with China. It doesn't make me an enemy of US, etc. But a portfolio mindset, it's very important for African nations. By portfolio mindsets, I mean, inventory. We need to check all of our project, all of our program, in the portfolio and be familiar with them. Very important, right? Because you can have, let's say, a railway that is built both by China and it should be aligned with our own development needs and not a proxy competition between A and B. That here is be building something upper or higher than the other. No, it should meet our own needs. So inventory of all the project and programs in the portfolio and be familiar with them, because we have to be familiar with them. Familiar, I insist, because technology transfer. If I'm to open my door for investors, and this is also why I'm seeking from China. I'm learning from China. I'm willing to attract more Chinese investors back home. Yes, they bring investment, but more importantly, they will form. They will, my people will get trained. Will also learn and to make made in Cameroon, made in Africa, made in Senegal. Technology transfer. Be familiar with that. Yeah. That's portfolio. And number 2, focusing on the bigger picture, with a clear purpose and having a based, or based on a strategic objective, a clear purpose, a bigger picture, right? Not just, what you're building here. Is it long term? Is it, sometimes you will even see, I did several field research. You will see that development partners ending up building several things that are actually very distant to the people. They even actually, it's like you're working and you just look at the brands. I mean, so that's it. And also,
Yeah.
continuously assessing and balancing priorities, and when I say priorities, I mean priorities based on our own benefits, priority based on risk, resources, and also the impact that this project will have. So the portfolio mindset, in just to sum it up in very easy language, because they will say, oh, you're a PhD, in easy language, the portfolio mindset, what I mean by that is that, okay, there are projects. When I do my assessment, okay, this project, who is the best, who can actually give me the best result, I work with him. It's not a US, China, France kind of thing. No, I want the best result because I want the best for my people. So for this project, I think this development partner is the best because we can actually price wise, return, sustainability and everything, right? But for this project, I think you are good, right? Balancing portfolio mindset. Because long time, look at what is happening throughout the continent. You will end up thinking, okay, because I'm friend, for example, with the US, or all of my project, everything with the US, and it intrinsically meaning the other development partners are enemies. No, that's no. I welcome all partners. Africa welcomes all partners, but there are projects that we think might fit for this because ABC and project. This is portfolio mindsets, right? And this is why I think we can actually leverage on our geopolitical setting, because the bottom goal is the African agency at all. Is the African agency. The African agencies mean it means we also proactively, when we sit at the table, we have to bring something at the table, not just hearing A, B, C. Oh no, we have to do this for Africa. No, no, right? The African agency, and the African agency means to have a capable manpower. So when I say this project fits US, so it's better for the US to be on this project. I have to attach, my people there to also learn so that when they go, let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, the US decides to build, I don't know, a stadium, or China decides to build this road and everything. Building in one is one thing. That's very good. Okay, we'll have this, but maintenance is another thing. Who will maintain? We'll also have to sign other contracts to contract more that to bring the same people to please maintenance, at least starting from the maintenance, right? There is a Chinese saying that has really, of all my Chinese villages, I really like. They say in China here, they say 借船
Yeah.
出海，从借船出海到造船出海. It means from borrowing a boat, crossing the river, to building your own boat,
Hmm.
cross.
You're building the boat and crossing the
Right?
river.
So, first, learning, my people need to
Yeah.
be by the side. So, it means this is on very basic term, but it might mean that our country should impose some sort of percentage when, So, be there, learning on the ground.
Hmm.
Okay, when you go, maintenance is my people, and they have a learning experience, maintaining experience, then they can make the made in Africa, made in Cameroon, made in Senegal, right? They can build another road in building your own boat to cross the river. So this is how.
Yes.
I mean, this is my idea. These are my thoughts on how we can better handle our geopolitical setting. So it aligns with African nations' national development goals.
I really like that last saying that you did, which is indicative of so many nations trying to get into global trade and development, borrowing
Mm.
resources, borrowing playbooks, frameworks from other countries, when in fact what they should have been doing, or what they can do effectively for themselves, is to build their own boat and cross. Because the end destination is the same. And then whether you get there, you're on somebody else's boat, or you're in your own.
Mm.
It's very cool. Speaking about trade, speaking about, I guess, the general theme for a lot of this is the need for infrastructure and industrialization. And we know that China has been a major investor in the past, I say maybe 2 decades, and African industrialization needs, they persist. And trade imbalances, through some people, through some scholars, they identify it to be still slightly imbalanced. What steps do you think which you should leaders of African nations engaged in this trade be taking to better leverage their raw materials, to better position themselves as, I would say,
Mm.
inherently rich? As everybody says, okay, Africa's the richest continent in the world, but also maybe lacking in GDP. So, what's the disconnect
Yeah,
in your
I think
mind?
you mentioned a very valid point. The transition, right? Raw material supplier. I always laugh. Oh yeah, the resource curse. There's such a saying. Africa has a resource curse. I think
Yeah.
this transitioning, from this raw material supplier kind of, to be active. I mean, it links with what we talked about earlier, right? Having everything aligned with our national development goals, supported by mutually beneficial kind of partnership, right, with our development partners. So, how? I think number one, and I mentioned that in my previous point, right? Value addition. Of course, you said industrialization. Yeah, very good. But promoting industrialization, but plus value addition, right? Because I think African countries, we should look into prioritizing some policies that push forward, that encourage local processing and manufacturing of raw material. Because exporting, you say we do want to transition. So it means we have to process locally, right? So then processing locally, of course, we need infrastructure. Infrastructure, when we talk about infrastructure in terms of local processing, or trade, etc. We mean parks, industrial parks, right? SEZs we do have, and also to so that when we attract this development partner to come. So so there is already an established network, and it's easy for them to work on our terms. So value addition is very important, right? To be able to transiting, processing locally instead of sending your cocoa beans. I mean, we have the cocoa, we send it out, the processes and everything, and the chocolate comes.
Yeah.
I mean, for the price.
Sell it that
Come
way.
on, right? Value
Come on.
addition.
That's
But
ridiculous.
also,
Yeah.
another thing that is important, right? It is the skills. We need to enhance the skills and technology transfer. I mentioned that also in my last point, right? Our partnership with China, our partnership with other development partners have to focus on technology transfer and capacity building, right? So that we should negotiate partnership that includes training programs, that include joint ventures, that include knowledge sharing initiatives to build local expertise to foster innovation. And that's also something that oops, I think the connection, we got lost again. Yeah, I was saying technology transfer, right, and enhancing skill, and that's also something that I appreciate with China over the years. There's of course with some pressure of African nation that now are seeing that okay, technology transfer is something that we should push forward. We had several trainings. I was here in China during the COVID pandemic, even in villages, helping, volunteering. I saw technology transfer. That's very good, but we should upscale it, right? So, and many we should standardize it, institutionalize it. That's a point with all of our development partners. Another point that I think will help us um, to undergo this transition might also be diversity. Because it's also great time that we diversify trade and investment, right? Higher value to our goods and services, right? So identifying, uh, markets, identifying markets, leveraging also our comparative advantages, in different sectors. We have several advantages. We talk about agriculture, textile, renewable energy. If you look at our potential in it's so our development partners are even going to Africa to set power plants and selling out electricity. So it's great time that we look into diversity. But another important point that we also talked about earlier would be regional integration. I still stick with my Ubuntu. We are stronger together. We go far together, right? We do have the AFCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade
Mhm.
Area, right? Which actually can play a crucial role creating a larger market, actually one of the largest in the world, right? And
Mm-hmm.
what is
Of
important,
course, especially now.
yeah, what is important, it is the intra-African trade. It's good that China is our first, partner, everything, but I mean, let's say you're Senegal and Benin. You are not even your trade. I mean, you're neighboring countries, right? Intra-trade, intra-African trade, right? Your neighbor is your first. I mean, look at what China is doing with
Yeah.
RCEP, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So strengthening the regional integration. it's also something that can help us transition, right? And this
And
integration
this
will be
is
enhancing our bargaining power and attract more diversified. Yeah. So if you look at it in China, there is another saying, 先富帮后富. It means the, the one that is more developed, sharing resources with the, lesser. So we can have that, and regional integration is that. If, for example, let's say in some regions, agriculture, they have more agricultural product, and other regions are, maybe it's dry there. We can exchange resources. In intra-Africa trade is very important. It's good to have big partners like China, India, Malaysia, US, blah blah blah, but them being your biggest partner, rather than the people that the
the
made
one
in
that's next to you.
Cameroon
Yeah.
has an easy access to Gabon, to Congo, to RCA, right? So intra-Africa trade, we are our first customers. Hmm?
Yeah.
Yeah. And also,
And a quick question about that.
yeah, please. Yes, please.
Like the the trade aspect seems to be emphasized. But then what about the talent aspect? What about the people moving, visas? When do you think that will be easier?
I, if you remember, I told you first that I'm still waiting for the AU passport. I was meaning
Yeah.
what you just
Yeah.
mentioned. So I think
That
the
exactly. Yeah.
circulation of people and goods is crucial. Look at the EU. For me, when I have a Schengen visa, in 5 days, 20 plus countries. But in Africa, my passport would be
Yeah.
full. I don't even know. Of course, we still have some regional kind of agreement. For example, with the Cameroon passport, Central African. I have one. I can go to Nigeria, etc. Right? But still, that's why I like what Kenya is doing. I like what Rwanda is doing. I like what Ethiopia is doing. Right? If you are an African passport holder, right? Then you come. So I think it's also great time. That's also the point that I wanted to make with regional integration, right? Trade, right? Trade. We say made in Africa. Okay, you want to promote, for example, made in Africa in China. That's very good for me. But for me, it's a step. Look at the history of the made in China, right?
Yeah.
So they are their first customers. They are their first customers. So that's why I think, and you mentioned a great point. It's also a great time that we bring down those I would say a features barrier, right? African has to EFCFTA is there for that. The AU is there for
It's a
that.
really it's a really interesting comparison you just made to we want to get more made in Africa products in China. Because I remember at a time it was like they were going from 中国制造 to 中国创造. And then that's the natural development. Made in China to create it in China, innovation in China, and then that's the export. Not just the material in itself. It's the idea that is then exported. It's the framework. It's the overcapacity, domestic overcapacity that is flooding out. So, uh, yeah, really interesting
Yeah,
point. Really interesting
that's
point.
it.
But it's still an early step in that
Yeah, at
evolution.
the early start. And
Still an
and
early step.
what is more important is for us to build solid foundation for sustainability. Don't just want to have your made in Cameroon, for example, in France. No, start with your local, with your regional. I'm very happy that you can speak Mandarin from your pronunciation. It's perfect. So you might be able to understand. You might be able to understand. That's why I also am willing to have more Africans to also come to China to learn about the Chinese ethic, Chinese ways of doing things. This is a plus. This is a plus because in the path of development, We're talking about trade. We're talking about investment. We're talking about this. There is a thing that you call that the this that here they call 中国特色. So it means
Yeah.
with Chinese characteristics. It means in simple
hmm
words. In simple word, it means if you pasta, you are getting into a China soil, you have to become noodle because it has to adapt. It has to adapt with my people, with the Chinese people, dietary,
Yeah.
habits,
That's the
right?
first time I'm hearing that. Wait,
Yeah,
that's so
in very,
funny.
because we have to,
Yeah.
sometimes you have to be very use very small imagery. I mean, this is how I am. I really um
I know, but that's really
yeah,
good. That's
yeah,
really funny.
yeah. So that's
hmm
that's a very strong way of doing. That's why I respect these people. I respect the work, and I'm willing to have Africans, especially the young people, come and learn so that us also, we can, based on what we learned from the US, from the West, from ABC and China, Japan, etc., to build our own path with African characteristics, right? So as it fits other people. I'm taking you an example. You know, a Cameroonian is used to eat fufu and the okra soup, for example. And no,
Yeah. Yeah.
you have to eat steak. No, we have our own dietary habits and that we're proud of, right? So, any new ideas, any new investment, any new perception, any new things that comes in should be, in China they say 因地制宜, should be, you know,
Yeah.
should kind of
Localized.
localize 本土制作
Mm.
with
Yeah.
local characteristics, right?
Yeah.
And this is the agency that we should exert on any of our development partners. And this is how we can also assert ourselves, assert the African culture, rather than just being there to, right? And this is
Yeah.
what we have to do. And trade, it comes with trade. And when we talk about trade, intra-African trade, before we talk about trading with our, do you understand? So
Yeah.
for me the normal figure would be your, maybe one of your biggest partner, Cameroon's biggest partner should be maybe Congo, Gabon, right? Of course they're standing, okay, well, our products going to the US, they have higher, maybe purchase power, maybe, but in terms of frequency, should be intra first before outside. So this is how we can standardize, we can solidify our market so that you, dollar, when you come into African, you, euro, when you come, you work with our own. Do you understand? So
Yeah.
yeah, 分而治之. That's what the Chinese say, divide and to. So anyway,
hmm
this is my perception on trade and investment, and thank you for also bringing this,
Yeah.
cross border kind of circulation of people and goods. That's also a very important point. That was because a businessman like Dangote, he said it. I went to the UNGA last year. In the UNGA, there is
Uh-huh.
what they call Global African Business Initiative. That is the event of the United Nations Global Compact. I was in the UNGA in New York last year, September, and Dangote was invited. He was one of. He said, "Can you imagine? I am doing. It's easy for me. It's easier for me to do business in." I was. Oh my, because I need visas to do that.
hmm
But when I'm in Europe, woo, it's like a fish in the water.
Easy. Yeah.
So that's
Easy.
also something we have to consider. Don't put barrier. We are our first customers. We are.
hmm
This is our first rules, because let me tell you something. With not only Chinese businesses, even if it's the Westerns, now the Korean, right? We have Korean, Africa. What they're looking is the market. Is the market. Do you really think, for example, one of our development partner will be solely focusing on South Africa only? No, South Africa, but the SADC region. They focus on the market. They are looking because they are looking at the purchase power. Look at Africa. We have 1.4, more than 1. It's now 1.5. China is 1.4,
Okay.
1.2. China is one. India are past that already. So, so you imagine just focusing on, let's say, 300,000 people is not even the population in Shandong province where I came from. In the actually one province in China, Shandong, has more people than the most populated country in Africa, Nigeria.
Wow.
One province in China.
Yeah.
So they're looking, just focusing on one country. No, they're looking into the market, networking. That's very good. That's good for us. But now, AFCFTA, regional setting, when they come, yeah, so we still have a long way to go anyway. But us, the young people, we really have to work hard. And for me, the way it's not just to say, oh, we have to do this. It starts with ourselves learning. That's exactly what I'm doing here in China. Learn first. My parents used to say you should have an empty cup mentality. So what do you think you know? Please,
Yeah.
what it and fill yourself
Empty
with
it.
knowledge. You equip yourself with knowledge, empty cup mentality. That's how you will be able to have different kind of perspective, and you will actually see through the problems that you're ongoing. We are there just focusing. No, it's night, it's night, it's night. Come to China, it's 6. If you stand here, it's 6. You stand there, it's 9. If you stand there, it's W. Stand there, it's M. So learn. We should learn first, right? Equip ourselves with knowledge so as to see, to better see. Look at other people's experience. That's why I chose to come here to China. Because if you look at how China, I think it's like how the China out of poverty, how China got out of poverty. I think it's Professor Zhang. She Singaporean. She wrote a very powerful book. Look, many years ago, the China GDP was even lower than Chad, in the
Okay.
70s. Look now. So you have this kind of country that went to we have to learn because we are also undergoing this process. But now we have the chance of having these successful results, these experiences, how to build our own, right? How to build our own path. Look inside, right? Intra-Africa trade. That's why I really like the Izowini consensus. When I see the C10,
Yeah.
when they're going, that's it. Remember. Now we say G20, we might go to G21. Why? Do you see? It's well, you see, it's going now to South Africa. South Africa G20 this year.
Yeah.
I mean, it means these are some signs that when we speak in one voice, of course, every country we have our own agenda. Africa has this particularity, When we come together, we have the African Union. Look at Asia here. Asia is oh, no, but here, look at the Organization of African First Lady for Development, the OFLA. Have you seen any other continent have the Organization of African First Lady? No, there's a World African First. So when we come together, it's easy, and we achieve greater things, right? So these are some of clips that signs that should let us know that by the time we come up together, by the time we set the tone, it means whatever happens in our own terms. So you pasta, when you get into Africa, you become fufu, you become couscous. I don't,
Yeah.
it has to fit our own habit. Hmm? It has to fit
Perfect.
our own
No,
habit.
no, I
So
love it.
yeah, that's you know, I think the mindset, but we should learn more, acquire knowledge, learn more, and reflect on the way out, reflect on our own pathway, our own characteristics. I think
That's
this is the
yeah,
African
a
agency that we
very
have.
good point. You learn what other people are doing and demanding, and then you demand that for yourself. Because if they come to you and you don't know the extent to which they've asked others, how could you ask them the same? Um, which, yeah, I really like that train of thought. It's and within that also keeps your own autonomy. And so you don't become such a chip. You don't become such a bargaining chip in some sort of geopolitical game. The last thing that I really wanted to talk about ending off was a little bit more of a free-form question. It doesn't need to be very long, but it's just about looking ahead. And you already talked about this. Looking ahead, I think you would like to see more than anything intra-trade, intra-travel, but and then C10 more advocacy at in the international community. But now, what do you see for the future of the continent, for the future of Cameroon, future of China-Africa relations? What's the next big movement? How does this evolve into something even more productive? Just considering those factors.
Well, yeah, I mean, oh, I think I lost. Hello, can you hear me? I thought it was yeah. So
Hey,
yeah,
yes.
I mean, the way out, yeah, you mentioned several points, but I think um also,
Speak to whichever one you think
yeah,
is most
for us,
comfortable, yeah.
it's great time that we also think of better strategies, so that we evolve our different partnership with not only with development partners but with among ourselves, right? Just to sum up, we already said it, integrated development plans, whatever come outside should be aligned with what we need, or what we have as a plan. But one thing that I also want to bring here is public private partnership, right? We need to, I think, for us African nation, we need to encourage more public private partnership, right? To also shed light on the private sector expertise, because here coming the private sector in China is very powerful, so powerful that there is a dedicated platform for the private sector, the All China Federation of Industry and Commerce, and they're doing big movement, because you know that the public sector is taking the bigger markets, but the private sector has experience, and it's, so I think PPP should also be leveraged, because there's also so much that us as African we can take. Look, because let me tell you something. A big private sector company here is bigger than maybe the top 200 countries, sorry, companies in Africa. Can you imagine, in terms of, yeah?
Companies.
So it is something that we should also value when we are dealing, not just China, our development partners. Also, we mentioned regional cooperation. Regional cooperation, it's our Ubuntu, our togetherness. It's our way to set the tone. It's our way to set what we need or what we want. Sustainability focus, right? We have to prioritize on green project, long-term environmental and economic benefits, even if, let's not be fooled. We just, if you go, oh, Africa, environment, oh, yo, we just contribute 4% to the global CO2. 4%.
Hmm. That's an insanely
Yeah.
low
But
number.
what we require for, you know, our development partners to respect, to also look for sustainability, right? Also, transparency and accountability, right? In the agreements, because we know you, because we need trust, and we need to ensure that those benefits are ensured. But also, I think, other than that, I think now digitalization is also, it's out, it's coming. This is also a very good way, because that's also one benefit that we have. Look back then, the US, China, when they were evolving, they didn't have all that. But now we are able to, it's just we have to learn. Education, we have to learn, right? Digitalization is also one way forward with the digital economy. Now DeepSeek is, we have, but also our own. Look, one other problem that has been on the mind in Africa is the data. Data for data in Africa is also a problem. Why can't we provide reliable data? Data here in China is very important. So important that every region, every province, every county, every city, county have what they call 年鉴. 年鉴 is a yearly assessment that is based on the data, which means, what has been achieved this year, what were the losses, what were the benefits, what were the challenges in everything. Everything goes into the data. So when you're bringing in policy, when you're making policy for the next year, you go back to data. So this data is very important. So that's why I say maybe AI can also, right? Energy. We say, okay, our bigger, can you imagine? Energy infrastructure has been, in French, we say talon d'Achille, our biggest problem. Can you imagine? I went back to Cameroon. I wanted to go to Sao Tome and Principe. This Cameroon, this Sao Tome and Principe. I have to fly back to Nigeria to come back to Douala and go. Someone is going to Capo Verde to go, let's say for example, to the Gambia or Cote d'Ivoire, Portugal, and you come down. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? So maybe, these things, let's just, it's about bridging these frontiers. Digital, physical, right? Data, but education. Those are the key. Those are the key point. Now you say how health or everything, whatever is happening now, whatever bad thing is happening now, oh, Africa is the helpless case. Look at COVID. Oh, Africa will be doomed. But it turned no. But no. So anyway,
Was
yeah,
it? No,
anyway,
yeah.
yeah. To finish up, I would like to finish also with the health sector. The health sector. We need to institutionalize our health sector. Look at the African traditional medicine. Artemisia, the penicillin. Look, those ingredients are coming from our our raw material, our resources. So let's institutionalize it. You know, why can't we bring the barefoot doctors and have them well trained? Let me bring one thing to your attention. We always say, or it is always said that Africa has a low health coverage, in terms of hospitals, doctors. But let me tell you that barefoot doctors have a wider coverage than the doctors and the hospital. Can you imagine that? So institutionalizing our, uh, 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 you know, traditional African traditional medicine. Look at the Chinese traditional medicine. Now they're exporting it. The Japanese, the Korean, the Indian. Look, and building. I'll end with this note: building our own API, active pharmaceutical ingredients, right? To really reach the African we want. But only one word: Ubuntu. Ubuntu. Going fast alone, going far together. Yeah.
Yeah, it is pretty remarkable to see how, I suppose, fashionable Chinese traditional, like Zhongyi, is in, especially in, I would say, what medicine practices, or just kind of people are more likely to seek out acupuncture, say, for example, if there's a certain illness, or bagua for sports. And so, like, because, Michael Phelps made it quite famous that one time, age in Beijing or something like that. Uh, yeah, but then knowing these indigenous and, well, just native secrets that have been kept for too long Yeah, it's all part of the export, that it's potential
Mm.
export, potential cultural exchange. It's underservicing the world, I guess, in a sense, if we don't have this. Because this is knowledge. As you said, you go out and you get knowledge and come back, empty cup mentality, but then people that come here, they should have the same mentality. They should have the same, they go to Cameroon, they learn exactly everything that they need to know. And then yeah. Um, well, thank you so much for joining, and it's it was very exciting. There's so many little tidbits. It'd be difficult for me to choose which ones I like the best. The clip, but of course the pasta to the noodle is fantastic. If that your original
Well,
quote,
yeah, that's when you go to
if it's
several
original, then
village,
I'll quote you. Yeah.
kind of also get awakened in certain. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, okay, I'll make sure you're credited for sure. But
I
there's a
don't
lot of great
actually I don't
ideas.
mind that, but good discussion
That
and thank you for inviting me. And also, Eric
hmm
is also a very good friend of mine. We've been to several villages together too. So yeah,
That's so funny, and it's so well. The world is, I guess, China is so small
yeah.
with its expat community, and then also the African expat community, and it's I'm really glad that there's people like you guys there currently that are, as you saying, doing teaching and dismantling the kubeningsya, the stereotypes
Well, still a long way to
and
go, and
the
yeah,
things that
we yeah.
still a long way, but it's necessary. It's absolutely
Yeah,
necessary,
yeah,
I would say. It's difficult, but
yeah.
so necessary. So thank you
Okay,
for
my
the work
pleasure.
that you're doing, and thank you
Yeah,
for joining us. And we'll get
yeah.
this up soon.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay, yes. Have a nice night. Bye bye. Bye bye.